I am Colin Hoffman. My preferred pronouns are we and us because that adds agency, accountability, and humanization to all of us. We are all here very excited about science and fiction today. We are going to be learning something, maybe something we didn't want to know. For examples, some of us like pineapples on pizza, some of us think Greedo shot first, and some of us enjoy being right. So Science and Fiction, A Romance in Reality is exploring the history and the mechanisms behind science and fiction, ways that they interplay, ways that they can be better, as well as prescriptions for best things moving forward for scientists as well as anyone creating fiction. So science and storytellers come from the same places and going in the same directions. So much of this stems from asking questions and proposing answers. The answers may be true, they may be able to be measurable in the real world around us. They may be imaginary, they may be aspirational, they may be what we want to go towards. A lot of these questions for all storytelling and for all sciences, where did we come from? Do we subscribe to the Big Bang Theory? Do we subscribe to the story of Adam and Eve? Or did someone just hit run program on the simulation we're in? No matter what the answer is, we all love asking this question. And the important questions are more interesting than correct answers. In addition, going forward, where are we going in the future? Are we going towards a cyberpunk dystopia, a cyberpunk utopia? Are we hurtling towards ascension or Armageddon? All of these are answered in fiction as well as science. There's so much more in common with the questions that we ask than differences between scientists, the scientific community, and the cosplay Comic-Con community. That is why this relationship is so tight. And when we ask, what reason do we have? Do we have a nobler purpose in the universe? Or is our purpose just to serve butter? Going right into the deep end, religion. Whether we are a believer, whether we are not, religion are the most successful storytellers in history. Even atheists know the story of Adam and Eve. That is a victory of storytelling. We have asked, where did we come from? What is the moon? What is the sun? Before we were able to write history. These are lessons we can absolutely take from religion. Religion also gives us senses of community, culture, and customs. The same reasons we all gather at events like this, to find people similar to us, to share new ideas, to learn new things, to have our ideas, our actions, and our lives affirmed. Absolutely. Same thing with religion as well. You can find your people wherever you are in the world. These also take place in the normativity, the norms. When you go into a church, whether you are traveling, whether you're in another country, if you see someone wearing religious iconography, whether it is a hammer of Thor, whether it is a yarmulke, whether it is any kind of religion, does Flying Spaghetti Monster have any memorabilia?
Yeah, it's the
Colander.
colander.
Colanders, thank you. It is a colander. I remember from high school now. Same thing. When we see that, we see kinship.
Yep.
They're like us. Again, pronouns are we and us. We can find us. We can find our people. And religion tends to tell these stories, the same questions that we've been asking for millennia. Where did we come from? What is the moon? What is the sun? What is temptation? What is evil? What are triumphs of human nature? What is bravery? All of these are told in stories. All of these are fantastic, tantamount evidences to what we value as humans. We valued it 1,000 years ago. We valued it 1,000,000 years ago. We value it today. Look at what we're celebrating here. And look at what we're excited about that's just about to come out. What season are we starting on Star Trek?
Which one?
The last season of Strange.
There we go. And we're excited for what that's going to bring. Another area that science and fiction have a very tight relationship is in education. Education bridges the formal institutions of schools with everything else that we learn. I forgot what visuals. You guys feel free to giggle at any of the visuals. That's always where I just have fun and throw little Easter eggs in there. But we also learn from our friends, from our family, from media. We can watch Sesame Street Saturday morning on our own. We can also learn from Sesame Street and Bill Nye the Science Guy and Magic School Bus in school. We got very excited when that TV was rolling in, right? The
Yeah.
teacher was probably tired. But these formative educations tend to stick with us. The things we learned as a kid, when that was a third of our lives, is something that we had learned that we've been thinking about for most of our lives. For many of us, it is still hard to say there are 8 planets in the solar system. Even if we believe that, yeah, Pluto doesn't count anymore. We know that. But for much of our lives, and again, when we're 10 years old, well, 9 years of my life, Pluto was a planet, and we learned about it. Those formative lessons that we learn tend to stick with us. We hear often about the first 5 seconds of meeting someone is the most important. Well, that first 5 seconds draws into the first 10 seconds, draws into the first 10 years, draws into the next 50 years of what we think about a person, what we think about an idea. And learning, education consists of 2 components. Learning and teaching are separate processes. They don't happen at the same time. We've all had friends that we try to warn them, you're gonna walk face first in that life lesson again. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You know how it's gonna go, and they don't learn. We've also all reached for a cookie fresh out of the oven and touched the cookie pan. That is a lesson we learned that no one had to teach us. So with education, for much of the bemoaning that, oh, well, it's the education system that has failed us, learning is done outside of that, particularly once people are outside of school. That's why awareness is so much easier than education. You don't have to understand. You don't have to recall quite everything to be aware of it. Whatever our acumen is in the room, we kind of know what the mitochondria is. We kind of know what kryptonite is. We kind of know what warp drive would be, whatever arena it might be. We kind of have a grasp of what quantum physics entails. Whether or not we understand it to a very high degree, it's very rare to find someone that understands all of it, but we can be aware of the world around us. So, especially with social media, as we're scrolling through, a study says what? Okay. Next week, oh yeah, I think I heard about that. Awareness is so much easier in human memory to be able to recognize something than to have to recall it. It's a lot easier. We have one file cabinet of the Dewey Decimal cards rather than lugging around our entire library on our back. Probably this crew in here, your library weighs a lot. So on the other side with fiction, fantasy is anything that we can imagine. Anything that we enjoy as entertainment. Does it have to be true? No. Does it have to be over the top and played to particular mediums? No. Fantasy can be stories, fiction, comics, reenactments. For millennia, storytellers and plays were of historical events when a particular king was inducted. Famous battles, famous lives, celebrities. We have LARPing going on in the next one right there. We have historical reenactors doing cosplay all the time of very particular periods in time. We have historical reimaginings. We have movies of real events that many of us remember. And we get to tell these stories of factual things as well. Not all fantasy is imagined. And so much of this time, we can introduce somebody to new ideas, whether they are our ideas, whether they're ideas out in the real world. Even reading through a comic. How many times are you like, is that true? And you choose to go on this passion of learning. Hey, let's go learn something. Is that true? Hey, is that possible? even if it's not possible, what will happen when that kid reading it grows up and starts trying to make it? Look at lightsaber technology, real world lightsaber technology, how far it's come in 50 years to go from little glow sticks that we were bashing on each other to very real potential weapons that we've got that can actually expand and retract in that are using plasma. It's incredible, and that stemmed from fiction. Fantasy also has the same dialectic of human parables. The most ideal caricature of heroism, the most ideal caricature of evil, whatever that looks like. A lot of times that is specific to us. What is the biggest villain you can ever think of? What's your favorite villain? Are they relatable? Or do you want to make sure everyone wants to see them get it? Do your heroes like to overcome things? Do your heroes have flaws? Are your heroes curious? Are your heroes noble? All of that is subjective to both authors and the audiences. And with fantasy, what's incredible about it, it can be done low budget. All you need is a dice and an empty room to play Dungeons and Dragons, to slay dragons, to travel through space. For anything that takes just a little bit of imagination to scribble an idea on napkins, all the way to the middling budget of what it takes to share the ideas and visuals of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, all the way expanded past that on an infinite budget. If it's the Illuminati with the lizard people that are using all the gold they hoarded from the Hollow Earth, hey, is not propaganda a type of fantasy as well? Mixing with the real world? And going straight into conspiratorial mindedness. Conspiratorial mindedness is the politically correct, scientific, studious way of referring to conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories are just fan fiction for real life. Hey, what if? Hey, maybe. Hey, how would? And that's fun. That requires a lot of imagination. That requires a lot of subcultures, communities, building trust with one another as well. Again, there are social ramifications, social benefits to this behavior. I don't care, I just study it. It's beyond my pay grade to try and change someone's mind. But it's absolutely fascinating to look at the imagination and the fantasy and the relationship with science that particular groups have, particularly when we oppose it. When the entertainment of the imagination, the suspension of disbelief, oh, these are special effects. Oh, we're sitting and playing a game. Hey, can we check the rules real quick? Hey, wait, I need a potty break. Whatever it may be, when that suspension of disbelief turns into real world belief, that is where real world effects happen. Conspiracy theories and stuff like that is actually a specialty of study in mine. It does not seem to be that good for one's health or those around them. So being careful on that disbelief becoming real world belief in our fantasies. And it's very entrapping. It's very alluring. If somebody is believing and living a cosplay outside of a convention, outside of a cosplay contest, that is much more of a lifestyle choice. That is much more of an identity rather than entertainment. Particularly with conspiratorial-minded beliefs, with skepticism, isn't it cool to be in on the secret? Isn't it cool to know the lore? No, the real lore. Oh, the real lore, the real truth? That is very, very appealing. So for any scientists or scientific science professionals, conspiratorial mindedness goes pretty hand in hand with outright science denialism, of rewriting real world empirical evidence as fantasy and in imagined worlds. That's fine. That is the way it is. However, the scientific community would do better to interact, to engage with that. If anyone has ever been bullied, if anyone has ever had someone calling them names, push them, punch them, the absolute worst thing any of us can do is to take the teachers' or our parents' advice on, hey, just ignore them. Again, going in with science, every action needs an equal and opposite reaction. If it doesn't, they're going to drill a hole straight through you. So, using scientific professionals as debunkers, as fact checkers, as debaters, giving a platform not to the person and not to the beliefs, but to these conversations on talking, hey, what does trust mean to you? What does evidence mean? These are great questions, and they're common questions that should be discussed. So, science has had so many successes. We'll go into the successes of science and fiction as well. Since the Industrial Revolution, we have had our lifespan, our life expectancy, our life satisfaction double. We have outpaced our biological evolutionary needs to be cautious of that tiger's going to try and eat me. I need to be safe. Hey, those red berries might be poisonous. I need to be safe. Hey, that water might be diseased. I need to be safe. Relatively now, we have a lot less concern with tigers running amok in our neighborhoods. We have a lot less concern with our water being contaminated. We have a lot less concern with our food being safe to consume when we buy it. That's a massive absolute victory. That's incredible. And now we're dealing with the effects of that. It's great. So these cosmic ambitions, reaching for the stars, leads to real world miracles today. Whether NASA got us to the moon or whether it was on their soundstage, don't care. What do we have today? We've got powder drink, we've got freeze-fried snacks, and we've got cell phones and the internet. Those are things we get today. The Mars rovers aren't carting off huge cargo crates of money to Mars. Those are benefits we are getting today. We are getting better drone technology. We are getting better telemetry, signal sending for 5G to 6G to 10G to be able to 3D print things, particularly all around today. These benefits help us in our daily lives. The access to information is incredible. Back in the 90s, we thought that access to information was a barrier to education and knowledge. Turns out, that may be a different piece of the puzzle. We all have the Library of Alexandria in our hands. If there's something that we want to know, we can go and find it. If we as humanity don't know, we can confirm that. That's amazing. We also have access to curiosity. So by this, I mean anybody asking the same questions that you have. If you want to know about cutting edge research into dark matter, into, hey, how close are we to warp drive? Hey, what are new studies in the mitochondria of the cell? Or who is studying the conspiracy theories? You can find those people. We can find the other people around us asking questions. Hey, can we cross-cosplay Star Wars and medieval armor? We can find the 10 other people in the world to get together every Sunday and duke it out. Yes! Fiction successes as well. Storytellers are trusted. We can look them in the eye. In 2009, Jon Stewart won a national award for the most trustworthy newscaster in America. He was furious because he sees himself as a comedian, as a jester, not as a deliverer of news. However, we trust him. Somebody that can look us in the eye and make us laugh after a long day. Someone that can add levity scrolling between all of these insane headlines going on in the world. We trust them. And that's very important information to have, particularly for science communicators. We have Jon Stewart being able to tell people, hey, did you know this? Passing the torch now, it looks like to a young man by the name of Josh Johnson, who also does a fantastic job of social science communication. He sits into a room of all white people and says, okay, Kendrick and Drake rap battle beef. Let's go step by step. And able to share these ideas, share cultural communication. We also see pseudosciences that get promoted to acceptable practices. The 5 love languages that are very famous, we're all kind of familiar, that we all like gift giving or having words. things like that. That was a book of imaginings. And it does not correlate to any physiological structures in the brain. It does not correlate to any empirical data that we can measure for what one's love language is. But we teach it in communications classes. We teach it in therapy. It is observable. It is something we can feel, even if we can't measure it. Spoon theory as well is an analogy for chronic illness. And that, again, it started as simply a way of measuring how much actions we can take in a day with spoons. That imagining is now becoming one of the formative ways of explaining chronic illnesses to those that may not have it. And we also turn the dreamers into doers. Albert Einstein, very famously, as a child, saw a ray of light coming into a room and asked himself, what would it be like to ride on a wave of light?
Is it so vertical? No.
Right? Is it going to be a smooth ride? Is it going to be bumpy on the photons?
I'm so sorry.
Is it going to be bright when I'm surrounded by them? Or am I going to be so small that it's dark? And now we're contesting it, but we were given the special and general theories of relativity. If you're familiar with Einstein and history of physics as well, there was a book I was lucky enough to be assigned in middle school called The Dreams of Einstein. It intersposed his real world research with his diary entries. Really cool way to present that kind of information. But again, if we can dream it, we can do it. Maybe not in our lifetime, but it will get done. And that's a pretty cool alchemy that all of humanity has. And we also, in addition to the science increasing accessibility to curiosity, we get curious. Star Trek has so much fantastical technology. Between 2012 and 2017, there was a $10 million prize awarded by Qualcomm for a $10 million tricorder prize. What they were offering was $10 million to someone that could invent or propose a portable device that will diagnose a patient as fast, as accurately as a board of doctors. Nobody invented a singular device that did it. However, over 5 years, they awarded multiple awards, hundreds of thousands of dollars to people that were inventing things that could do it in composite. And now we have portable x-rays. We have portable ultrasounds in areas where they don't have access to hospitals, to technological healthcare. We can send nurses out into rural communities with portable ultrasounds to be sure to get good fetal workups for pregnant women. That is amazing. And it's all thanks to ideas we got from fiction. On the other side of this, areas that science could improve, sciences can be disproven. The theory of the four humors, the four liquids that supposedly were in our body that needed to be in balance for us to be in health, and when they would get out of sync, we would become ill, is now debunked. We know it's not true. There was a science called phlogiston, which was a theory of a chemical in every living thing, in every inanimate thing, that determined how flammable something would be. We now know that that's not the case. Phrenology. Phrenology was a eugenics theory on the shape of one's skull would determine life path, determine bravery, determine intelligence. If anyone remembers the scene from Django Unchained, where Calvin Candy had the skull of Old Ben talking about the shape of the skull and how people with that skull shape were subservient. That is phrenology. That, at the time, was scientifically sound. So science can change. Science is not the art of finding what is. It's finding of, okay, how can we change it? How can we better understand it? How can we disprove this and understand the world better? Science also has a history with ethical conundrums. Every code of ethics is written in blood. Sadly, usually innocent blood. The scientific community, though, would do well not to ignore this, to be conscious of it, to have race-conscious studies, to have gender-conscious studies. It's probably not the best course of action, though, to pretend like it never happened. It's also probably not the best course of action to point at that and say, see, I'm not trusting anything science says. Well, drinking water's pretty healthy for you. I don't care what big science says. That's okay. But being aware and moving forward with that knowledge helps a lot, and disclosing that also builds a lot of trust. Science also has had harmful prescriptions. Banning DDT was an insecticide used around the world, and big science got together collectively deciding that, well, over time, it's shown to increase likelihood of cancer. It also is the most effective insecticide against mosquitoes in Africa, and we have millions of children dying of malaria instead. Was it right? Was it wrong? We only know what we know now. Chernobyl. We know radiation doesn't give you superpowers. After the Chernobyl meltdown, the top scientists from around the world got together to try to figure out what effects these are going to have on the survivors. The survivors were told they were not going to be able to live a normal life. They were told they were going to be sick. They were told they would not be able to have children. They were told if they did have children, they would have birth defects. Decades on, the largest, most efficacious health effects on the Chernobyl survivors that we measured were mental illnesses, of stress, of anxiety, of depression, of stigma, on being told your lifespan was cut in half, on being told you can't have kids, on being told you're going to be deformed. And relatively, they were fine. So this is another area where prescribing things in the future isn't the most accurate art, whether in science or in fiction. Again, with the trust, institutionalization is not something we trust. We can look Jon Stewart in the eye. We trust people that we can give a face, a voice, a smile to. We inherently do that as humans. We want to find our us. We want to find our group. Ooh, us. We can't look science in the eye. We also have measured, we are currently at a peak of distrust in institutions globally. It is not specific to the US, but if it has an acronym and a big beige building associated with it, we don't trust it. Right or wrong, we need to send more people onto podcasts. We need to send more comedians. We need to send more people with eyes, smiles, and faces to be able to interact with communicating science ideas. Fictional improvements as well. Professionals now have access to be able to critique any piece of media we see out there and see how accurate it is. We know things that are radioactive don't glow green. We know they're not going to give you superpowers. There's still kids occasionally eating mercury, eating toxic chemicals and stuff like that because we read it in a comic book. So being accurate is something that fiction can consult scientists about. Again, with Star Trek. Erin McDonald is a darling of ours who is a science advisor. She is sit 40 hours a week just being like, okay, gravity would work this way. I'm just here to tell you how. If it makes a cool story, if it makes a cool fight scene, all right. But there's someone to check the science there, and that's really important. So we've also got to recognize the diegetic effects of the audience and authors. Diegetic just means both of these are active agents. Audiences will hear a story and share it to those around them. Authors will hear feedback from an audience and be able to change that. Both of them will have an effect both on each other and the world around us. Ways this can be improved. Imagine, what would a world look like that had both trans people and Polyjuice Potion? I'm just saying. So this leads to, we can correct best practices. Between 1993 and 1995, Michael Crichton is the original author of Jurassic Park and its sequel, The Lost World. He spent so much time interviewing paleontologists and zoologists about the science behind his books. 90% of all of his written works have been turned into television and film. He's a massively influential person on how this crosstalk between science and fiction can be achieved. So in the first Jurassic Park film, the tyrannosaurs famously could not see you if you sat still. This was because paleontologists at the time noticed a common divot in the visual cortex of a skull of a Tyrannosaurus rex and frogs. Frogs can't see things that move that well. In between the first and second book, they found out that that was untrue and that dinosaurs can see motion just fine. So in the second book, a character said, well, if the T-Rex is chasing me, I can just stand still, right? To which a scientist character says, yeah, you'll turn into a chicken nugget. Best practices is, hey, we can correct that. Yeah, I know I said that. I know people think that. It's dumb now. We know better. We know better. It's absolutely okay to revisit topics, cultures, characters, and improve upon them. This is an iterative, continually refining these designs. We can continually go back and do reboots. We can do more racially inclusive stories of past ones. We can do new seasons of Star Trek with new special effects, with new characters, with new takes on the tales. Absolutely. One of my favorite parables of this transformative agency of characters was in Avatar: The Last Airbender, where it wasn't even in the show. But the lesson of just because you meet someone when they're a season 1 Zuko doesn't mean you can't help them along to be a season 3 Zuko and redeem a villain into a hero. Everything is capable of changing. Our stories, the characters we grew up with. Well, that's not the one I knew. That's not the original. It's the one we got now. So prescriptions, the best practices, the best ways we can move forward, bridging science and fiction, is to increase this crosstalk. Especially in the age of communication, we can find an expert in the field that we want to know more about, that we're writing a story about. We can crack off an email with questions. We can schedule Zoom meetings. We can find interviews. We can even do our own literary research to find what the best practices in the field are. If we are writing a story on, hey, what if crystals were more magic than they are? Which ones would be electrical powers? Which ones would be mood influencing? Which ones would be alchemic, changing things to other things? All of those have real world applications within the periodic table. We got to find the right people to ask. So storytellers asking scientists and scientists asking storytellers, we can bridge this. A lot of scientists don't like talking to people. Let's find the comedians. Let's find the communicators that do like talking to people and doing that. A lot of research now is even asking for video packages on your research so they can have a 5-minute soundbite to put out in their journals. So revisiting, refining, and redeeming our ideas, our characters, our stories, continually wrestling with this and doing that moving forward, because we already know the patterns that we have. That is not in the past. Pattern means it's going to happen again in the future, as we've spoken about with Star Trek. Those were not lessons of the past. Those are descriptions of how we are now. Wrap it up. I am a scientist by trade. Big old thing of references. I did do research into these. They are research-backed. Notions and prescriptions with that. I always like to have references on there just so I know I'm not talking, again, gobbledygook out of my pie hole. If anyone is curious for my social science communication content, I also do it on social media under the handle The Sociologist, finding what makes us human through scientific domains with that. I do collaborative research, research consulting. If anyone wants to do podcast interviews for professionals sharing in your field, political science, very hot science right now, understanding why we disagree the ways we do. Those are absolutely awesome. Anytime you guys see me, I'm a friend, come and say hi. Thank you.